First of all, I want to take this opportunity to say a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. It means a huge amount to me personally when we're able to gather together like this and have conversation, and in the context of that conversation, also to have debate and deliberation. The church, I believe, is not in a place of hopelessness. I think that we are in a place where challenge and opportunity are presenting themselves day after day. And we, as ordained people and people who are involved in the church in different ministerial capacities, must take the bull by the horns. When was the last time we listened to the voice of Jesus? I heard the voice of Jesus say, "Come unto me and rest." Actually, it's a little bit more proactive than that. I heard the voice of Jesus say, "Come unto me and let's do something about it." Now the thing is, let me make it totally clear to you, open to God is not a gimmick. It's not a one-off. It is to roll over from one year to the next, and we can do that collegiately as a diocese, but you've got to do it in your respective church communities and local ministry areas as well. Be imaginative.
We're talking about what does it mean to be a missional diocese, and I want to just start with a sobering statistic, and that is that roughly speaking, 10% of the population engage with coming to church. Maybe another 10% have a fringe connection with church through wider activities that we have, like our ministries to school, funeral ministry, things like that. But that means that 80% of the population just think of us as a little hobby on the side. We're an irrelevance to most people, and I know that's hard to hear. So what I'm interested in is how, during the course of the Open to Year mission and in the years following, do we create open spaces to help people who have no engagement with church to become more open to God. And I think we have to recognise that we live in a society where we can't just go onto the streets with placards and shout what we believe. We won't gain any ground there. What we need to be more open to is to creating spaces where we can have dialogue and conversation and journey with people, but recognising that as we journey with them, we're sharing something of ourselves with them vulnerably. And so I read this in Jesus walking along with the disciples on the road to Emmaus. I read it in 1 Peter, where it's written, "Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you about the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect." So what I want to encourage you to think about is that some of you will have very creative, thinking outside the box, pioneering kinds of minds, and you will have the kind of brain, you'll be in a minority, but you'll have the kind of brain that can think about what can we do creatively that will create space so that we can have big conversations with people about life, death, God and the universe, but that are in ways that are not threatening, that are not in ways that are argumentative, but that have a sense of being alongside. Now, I just want to give a couple of examples of the kind of thing I mean. And you might think they're a bit wild and wacky, or you might think, oh, we've done all of that, what an old hat she is. One thing you could do is do a series of films, but not Christian films, just films that open up questions about life, death and the universe. We used to do a thing in my church in London called Conscious Clubbing, which was a full club night, but with no drugs, no alcohol, and it was all about prayer and dancing and being embodied in your spiritual practice. And I was like a chaplain to that. 90% of the people that came to Conscious Clubbing were not remotely Christian, but the dancing together and holding community together opened a space for dialogue and conversation. Another route might be poetry, another route might be music, but it's about creating spaces for us to have conversations as equals, sharing about our spiritual journey in a way that might entice someone else to be curious about the faith that we have.
I've been given the task of talking about inviting into faith. And my mind went straight to those well-known words from Romans 10. How can they then call on the one they have not believed in? How can they believe in one whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. And when I say inviting into faith, your mind might leap to big gospel presentations and altar calls and all that sort of stuff, which might be a little bit scary. And there's certainly a place for that. But actually it's much broader, that idea of inviting into faith. What inviting into faith really is about creating pathways, creating ways by which people can find out more, are able to engage more deeply if they want to. Many of us have wonderful things happening in our churches, amazing outreach events and social events and dealing with deprivation and all that sort of stuff. But it can also be all too easy to do all those amazing things that are making a wonderful impact in our community, and we never actually get round to mentioning Jesus. We forget to talk about our faith because we kind of feel a little bit awkward about it. But then they have no opportunity to think about Christian faith because no one's talked to them about it. We haven't said. Or that we do reference our Christian faith, but there's no obvious next step, no obvious way to go to explore more other than, well, turning up on a Sunday, which can be rather scary. So how can we share our faith in ways that are relevant and then make available pathways for people to go and explore more and engage more deeply? So we're thinking a little bit about approaches to sharing faith, such as ways we can talk about our faith in existing groups and services, things like our website and our social media, how we can leverage those to be more than just notice boards. Or having relevant materials available at groups and events and things that we're running. But then different ways people can engage with further, which might be groups or courses, things like Alpha or Emmaus or those other excellent materials that are out there. I'm sure you know many more. But there are also slightly more low-key things you can do, things like Uncover or 321, which you can just give to people and they go and do and come and grab coffee with you afterwards and have a chat about what they've been thinking about, or you can do one-to-one if running a group feels a little bit beyond what you're capable of doing. How are we, having engaged with our communities, having engaged with people around us, making it possible for them to hear about Christian faith and then start to consider it for themselves in ways that are natural, non-threatening and life-giving?
I'm just going to read a little bit of scripture from Matthew chapter 4, verse 19. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So, at its core, discipleship is about following Jesus. It's about coming alongside Jesus. But as clerics, we are that person that represents Jesus to the world. And so we need to come alongside people. We need to build relationships with them, and we need to spend time with them. And I think that's a really important thing that we need to take on board. I like John Mark Comer's idea of people being apprentices, and this idea that when you do an apprenticeship, you watch the person that is doing the job, and then you might take part in that job. You might do a little bit of serving here, a little bit of serving there, and then the person that is teaching you will then say to you, "Actually, I think you're ready to do a bit on your own, maybe with a bit of guidance." And then eventually you get to a point where you say to that person, you're okay, you can go and do that in the world on your own. And I think that model of apprenticeship is a really, really helpful model. When I'm doing work with children, youth and families, I spend quite a lot of time with my young people just sitting. And I'm in a lucky and very fortunate position that I also get to spend a couple of hours with children on a Wednesday morning. And I have a group of pupil chaplains, and we sit and we just read the Bible together. And the children lap it up, and they ask me questions, and we just sit there and do. And then I give them ideas as to what they can do to help the rest of the children in the school. So they go, well, we could do prayers with them. That's a good idea. How are we going to do that? And we do a prayer club. And the children need that. And I'm just there supervising. So they take things off of prayer spaces as schools, they come up with ideas, and they've got loads of wonderful creative ways of praying together that they do. And now I can leave them every week, and they get on and do it on their own, and I don't need to be there. There are ways of doing these things that we need to be very aware of, but I think that apprenticeship model of coming alongside children, young people, families, and just being with them is really important. There are, of course, things that can help us with that, and I think Sam's just mentioned some of them. But certainly the John Mark Comer for adults is a really good course of things that you can look at. It takes you through the different disciplines that we use, so fasting and Sabbath and prayer and all sorts of different disciplines, and each has its own 4-week course. I found that a really, really helpful thing to use. There is, of course, Alpha and Emmaus and all of the other coming to faith courses, but if you're looking at discipleship, you're looking at the next step. So you're looking at how we can move those people on from a place of learning about Jesus to a place of becoming more like Jesus, and that's what discipleship is all about.
The Christian faith is rooted in joy and delight, and one way we can talk about Jesus as being the joy of God outpoured. And I'm absolutely over the moon that in our diocesan logo, joy, llawenydd, is that second word that's in there. So as part of Open to God, we want to be intentional about thinking of how we create opportunities to share joy and delight through celebration. And to build each other up in doing so. So what we're referring to here primarily is not our regular pattern of worship and the services that we hold in that way. But certainly there's opportunities within it to review what we're doing and to think how we can use celebration more within that. But in the discussion groups that's going to be following, in the celebrating faith, we're going to be thinking about how we build outside of these times and use them to feed back into that regular worship. So as we look across the year that has been, what opportunities have we had to celebrate worship with the communities that we lead? Where were the opportunities for people to come together in joy and celebration? Perhaps it was a songs of praise, a Gaman Vagani, maybe even reading a Christian play and enjoying doing all the silly voices together. What got engagement, and what might you share with other people? What might an achievable programme that builds in celebration look like as we look across the next year to Pentecost 26 and beyond it as well? How can this be a catalyst for deepening faith and helping those who maybe are on the fringe coming in to find a way into local worshipping communities? I wonder what reasons you would give for why this is significant and important. Perhaps the following might come into your list. Help express the joy of knowing Jesus and being his follower. Encourage people to engage with their faith publicly in a different way. Give opportunities for ecumenical engagement. I'm sure you've got lots more. There could be 1,000 reasons, but really we only need one reason. And it would be great to hear what your reason is to help celebrate faith. Having opportunities to celebrate faith reminds us and others that, as St. Peter, who's been very popular this morning, said, we have tasted that the Lord is good. The point of these events is to remember that we are living stones and that we are being called by Christ to be built up and into a spiritual house, to help us remember our identity as a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, filled with the joy of Jesus. We need to be intentional about creating those opportunities, and together we have so many wonderful experiences that we can share together. I'm hoping that everyone is going to go away this morning with something to think about celebrating faith.
So I've been tasked with uniting faith, uno ffydd. Felly mae ffydd sy'n gennym yn Rhys yn ein huno, a dyna sut ni am un cymunedau edrych yn hyfryd. Uno mewn cymrodwaith. Mae llawer o eglwysi wedi tyfu a datblygu system o grwpiau bach. Chi yn cynnwys yn amlwg gan ganiatau I unigolion dod I hyd I gymuned, dod o hyd I cymorth ymarferol a chyngweithio ysbrydol. So the faith we have in Christ does unite us, and that is what we want our communities to look like, uniting in fellowship. And many growing churches have developed a system of meeting together in small groups, allowing individuals to find community, practical help and a spiritual interaction. Yn y grwpiau hyn, nid yn unig mae pobl yn trafod testuniau beibledd neu'n gwrando ar esboniadau o pobl eraill, ond mae'n hefyd yn cymhwyso mewnweliadau beiblaidd I fywydau beinyddol. Felly mae hwnna'n hynod o bwysig I feithrin perthnasoedd ac ymddiriedau. And in these groups, people do not only discuss Bible texts or listen to interesting explanations and sermons by other people, but also apply biblical insights to the everyday lives of participants to build relationship and, of course, the important trust. A mae grwpiau'n effeithio ein pennau, mae fe'n effeithio ein colonnau a hefyd yn effeithio ein dwylau. Mae ein meddyliau yn cael eu hysgogi, mae ein colonnau yn cael eu cynhesu ac mae ein dwylo yn cael ei egnio I fod yn barod ac yn awyddus. So one of the wonderful things about groups is that they not only impact our heads, they impact our hearts, they impact our hands. So our minds are stimulated, our hearts are warmed, and our hands are activated and energized so that we can be ready to go out and be eager to go out into the communities. Un o'r ffyrdd rydyn cyflawni hyn yw ein bod yn dechrau, yn parhau, ac yn datblygu a gweithgareddau a grwpiau cymrodwaith, grwpiau gweddi, digwyddiadau a chyrsiau gweddi. And one of the ways we achieve this is we continue, and of course we try to develop fellowship activities and groups, prayer groups, events and prayer courses. Y cysyniad cyfan yw cymrodraeth ac ymgysylltiad o fewn yr eglwys. Mae pobl heddiw yn chwilio am gymuned ac mae cymuned unedig bob amser yn ein denu. The whole concept of fellowship is that it is engaging within the church. People today are looking for community, and a united community is always attractive. Felly mae ffydd sy'n ddynamig yn dod â pobl ynghyd ac mae gyda'n gilydd yn golygu y gallwn fod yn unedig mewn angerdd. A faith that is dynamic brings people together, and together means that we can be joined in passion, outreach, and through that we create a mission and a community that are engaging. So felly mae math o eglwys sy'n arddangos hyn yn anochfygol ac wedyn yn gweddio y bydd y genhedlaeth newydd hon yn gallu arddangos hyn a dod â ni yn atgosach at Dduw. A type of church that displays this is unstoppable, and we pray that this new mission we will be able to do that and bring glory to God.
The idea is to come up with a plan for 1 or 2 years of what you're going to take from here today and do when you get back. I recommend the bit for everybody called, the bit that I recommend for everybody is called the 4 disciplines of execution. The first one, make sure you figure out only 2 things in your organization, in your body, in your church, in your business, that will take you forward by certain measurable goals. Think of 2 that your LMA could do with that will move your LMA forward by the end of next year. 2 things. That's the first thing. Think of 2. The second thing is, what are your measurable goals to do that? So as a group, figure out what measures you're going to put in place. Measures, let me give you. That our worship sessions will be more exciting. That our people will come to church and leave church on a buzz. They have been fed, they enjoyed each other's company, and they have enjoyed meeting with the Lord. The third thing you need to decide is, who is going to get us there? Who is going to own that in our team? To rely on somebody doing it because we're all doing it, never ever get us there. Fourth thing is to have regular, short meetings of no longer than half an hour discussing the measures that we put and whether we reached them, are we predicted to reach them or not, once every 2 weeks. He recommends shorter periods of measurements. He speaks about weekly meetings, but in our settings, weekly meeting will be too much. You might decide actually even 2 weeks too much. Let's have 3 weeks. Initially, you would need to have a greater investment in these meetings and they can tailor off later on. But to begin with, you would need a much more touching base and actually looking at those measures. So these are the 4 things that you to keep in mind as you have this discussion. So 2 things they're going to take forward, and please make it count this session. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to invite you to contribute, but I'm going to invite one of you to come and share with this plenary session.
There's a couple of things that we were discussing. One is a questionnaire, getting out, asking the community, what is it that you want to hear from your church? What do you want from your local church? And I think it's really important to hear what the community is saying, not just to put something out. I mean, the gospel is the answer. You know, anyone who's been to Sunday school, Jesus is the answer, but we want to know what is the question and how we can then pitch the message that we have, the gospel that we have to the people of Llanelli, in Kidwelly and in Berryport. And the other thing that we want to see conversions and baptisms, adult baptisms as well as infant baptisms. We've got the coast, we've got the sea there, the beach, we've got the Triedi, and we've got a baptistry in St. Peter's Church. And so we plan on using all of them, and so doing what Jesus said, go out, make disciples, baptising them in the name of the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. And that's what we plan on doing.
Okay, well, my daughter, Maisie, she's 20 now, and my son's 18. And my daughter has spent a lot of time saying to me, you spend a lot of time helping with the children and the youth, but when we get to a certain age, there's nothing. And I invite them both to church. My daughter comes occasionally, my son sort of dropped off a little bit, because when they do go, it's just full of older people who they love, but actually they're not getting any fellowship. And even when they were studying their A-levels at Pembrokeshire College, they struggled because there was no Christians, and it was almost they were embarrassed to sort of say. So my daughter, it's her idea that we're sort of going to run with. She said that Gen Z, this is it, this is where it's at. This is where, you know, people are inquisitive, they need God. She knows that there are friends of hers that say there's something missing in their life, and I think we all know what that is. So we are hoping to set up more of a social gathering for Gen Z. So, we haven't exactly chosen the age range, but we're talking about young adults. So not youth club, this is something completely after that. Somewhere they can get together, they can support one another, they can share, different things that are going on in their life, and they're supported in prayer with one another. And then, if they meet up regularly, eventually, we never know, it may grow, and they may want to be, self-sufficient, self-supporting, and even have like a church plant at the end. I mean, we're talking down the line. That's very ambitious, I know, but I'm all about that. We're going to pray about it. We're in very early stages of planning it and talking about it. But it's something that we don't just want to keep it in our own LMA. We want to open it out because there's young people in all of your areas that are lonely.
We've had mentioned this morning vocations and growing vocations. If we look to the young farmers, the young adults themselves take care of that organisation. Yes, there is some greater adult oversight in terms of safeguarding, etc., etc., but the young adults propel young farmers themselves. It gives them an opportunity of leadership. It gives them an opportunity to explore their vocation. And so one of the aims around self-sufficiency is empowering those young adults.
I think we're agreed that one of those things that we're missing is reaching out to the 18 to 40 bracket. So we've got lots of older people in our churches, and we do quite well with little people, very little people, but there's not a huge amount going on with that bracket. So I think that's probably one of the areas that we're thinking we need to look at. And we've been quite blessed just recently with, there have been 2 schools and the college who have approached us to actually engage with them rather than us having to chase them, which has been really lovely. So God's been good as far as that's concerned. So that's one area that we're hoping to be able to start engaging with that age group. The other thing that we're quite concerned about is, and I think we discussed this in the discipleship group that we did earlier, is that actually sometimes our congregations have not been discipled properly themselves. They haven't quite got that point. So we think we need to do a bit of work on that in order then to be able to work towards how we might build together a team of pastoral visitors, for instance, or people that can go out and do some pastoral work alongside the vicar and other things.
At an LMA level, we're going to be going through the Leading Your Church into Growth in the hope that that's going to provoke conversation and discussion and ideas, and that's going to be taken down to the individual churches for each of them then, those who want to go through that either themselves or with me. And then we're looking at the things that we're doing in the churches. Many of them have started things that they haven't done for a while. The Pruning for Growth has actually acted as a catalyst for thinking, what are we about as a church? So some of them are going to do something as simple as doing an autumn fair again that they've not done for a while. But we're going to be thinking about how can we use this to also introduce people to church, and then to introduce people to Jesus, or to have a conversation that's about more than the weather or the rugby or whatever it might be that's in the news at the moment. So we're being proactive about that. We're going to make sure there's good publicity and flyers and tracks, and we're going to think about how we can start conversations with people that have got real meaning.
We've had the idea of looking at the 321 app and using it as an evangelistic tool and concentrating on one-to-one evangelism, building up relationships with people across our LMA. And the other thing we've looked at as well that we had discussed previously is making more of the agricultural year. We're very familiar with harvest, of course, and that brings people in, the harvest suppers and services, but we at the moment do nothing for Plough Sunday, Lammas or Rogation Tide. So we're going to look at this as we're very much a farming area, and it would be a good way of drawing people into church activities. Not necessarily holding them in church buildings, but getting out into the community and doing things with others and drawing them in.
We discussed setting up a prayer group in our LMA, not simply a meeting of clergy, but for clergy laity, essentially embedding that culture of prayerfulness in the people, equipping them, helping them to grow and deepen their faith through regular meetings where they can both take the people to God and also go to God.
We spoke about in September we're holding what we're calling a worship workshop to encourage lay ministry in various ways, encourage people to think about it, to learn about it, to grow in it, and then as well looking at we host a LMA service every month where we join together and to utilise people's own stories, their testimonies, and bring that in and share with that.
Two areas we want to see more of, and that's prayer and celebration. We want to pray more, we want to celebrate more. There's lots of details out of that, but we're already doing lots. It's more about saying, how can we just keep those two things at the forefront of who we are and what we're doing?
We decided on the one-to-one approach, and what we'd like to do is set up a series of pop-up priests in our local cafes. So if we advertise where we're going to be, so for an hour on a Wednesday we might be in one place going across the ministry area, and with a little pop-up sign on the table saying, come and talk to me, I'm available to chat. But we're very aware that from that we need to be able to invite people to come to things, as we've started Alpha, and that will happen again, but we'll also be starting Bible study, and we have a small sort of informal contemporary service, so it's matching people to things that will draw them further into discipleship. We're going out to them, not expecting them to come to us.
We have lots of things in the pipeline. We've got Beth and I doing a joint beach service next month for the Sea Missioners Day with picnic, so that's one thing. But the two things we thought we'd like to do is celebrate our dog walkers. I'm a dog walker, and I quite often get a lot of ministry talking to people out walking, farmers walking past or driving past in their tractors. So we thought we'd like to do that and celebrate St. Caradig Day and have a special festival for that. And the other thing, I've pinched from somebody from this morning, is open the church. We thought we'd like to open the church for a couple of hours every week, every month, and sit there, maybe have a short service, but just sit there waiting for people to come to us, making it a safe space for them to come talk and go from there.
Across the LME is a very large geographical area, and that we could implement the possibility of what is known as a roadshow. So we could take what Jonathan is going to be doing and move it around the LME.
I heard a great idea of running a film which is all about trying to engage people and ask bigger questions, and then try and help them to invite them into exploring how those answers might work with the Christian faith. So we're going to be showing Barbie at Theatre Gwyn on the 12th of August. If you want to come, you have to bring someone who's not a Christian with you. Yeah, it's fine, everyone can come, but you have to bring a non-Christian with you. And off that, as they come out, well, there's going to be a discussion which will be led by Archdeacon Mones to engage with big questions that come out of Barbie. And Archdeacon is going to tell me what those big questions are that he wishes to talk about. And then on the way out, everyone is going to get a leaflet. And if they think they're a Christian already, it's going to be an invitation to Discipleship Explored. And if they want to explore what Christianity is, it's probably something like an Alpha. That will be running. And the idea is that hopefully then people from elsewhere in the ministry area not only come along to that course, but then can take that course out and run it in their community. Having experienced it, they have been apprenticed, and with some help and support, they can then deliver it in their context in their community. Possibly, if we can then find another £160 distribution fee with the film being shown in Solva, for example, or in other places. So, test pilot, test track, and then hopefully roll it out.
The two things we talked about, firstly, was around communication. I think we've got 20 churches in our LMA. It comprises of two quite big towns, lots of rural areas. And we've started trying to encourage the churches to come together for Christian Aid, for Ascension Day, We had something going on in all of them for Thy Kingdom Come, encouraging people to come to churches that they don't normally worship at. But actually just publicising what we already do is something that we've really found quite difficult. So that would be one of our priorities, encouraging people to go to churches that they don't normally worship in, to get to know the people who are there. And also Samuel was explaining to us about the 321 app. I'm looking in his direction because I'm not the most tech-savvy person myself. But again, looking at how we could use apps like that to disciple people. And my understanding of it is that people can use it in their own time, but then it would be looking at bringing people together in a supportive environment to discuss their faith. So they were the two main things for us, communication in the LMA, and then looking perhaps at how we use new technology to bring people together.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you all for taking part and really engaging with this. Please do the rest of the steps, because the ideas are there. There's amazing ideas. Who's going to be responsible for these ideas in each LMA? Not responsible to make them happen, but responsible to keep the team on task to make it happen. Does that make sense? There are different things. And then what's the scoreboard? So what are you looking at as results, and how far into the future are you looking at these results? And then how often are you going to meet to discuss? Are we reaching? But that will be the only content of that meeting, nothing else other than that to discuss. What have we aimed to achieve? Have we reached there? Are we in target? And if we're not, what is preventing it from happening? Very simple things. Please carry on that. So why did we want to do this today? We weren't meant to have this CMD today. We requested it, and the team who sets the CMD sessions were kind enough to give us this date. And the reason we wanted to introduce thinking about the year of mission open to God very early on before we launch it in November. And so we are actually, we hit the ground running when we get there. And the idea being is, often when you're asked to come for a big event, which is the weekend of Pentecost next year, hopefully it's in your diaries, in every diary in the diocese. The Saturday is going to be a big fun day in the Old County Showground, which is the Old Carmarthen Showground. That is big. And so there's going to be a big celebration there for the whole day. And then on the Sunday, we're going to do a reduced event on the Sunday throughout the day, but followed up by a big service in the evening, which is an ecumenical service on Pentecost Sunday.